It seems as though the media salivates anytime there is a shark bite event and it's labeled as a shark attack that includes all of the horrific details. The story reaffirms the fears many people have of sharks and demonizes them. But there's always a piece of the story missing that could get to the real story. For example, a recent story that is being shared is a potential white shark bite off of the coast of Mexico. The headlines in the stories are focusing on where the person was bit, but not on the details of why the person was out in the ocean, even though there was there's a warning of increased presence of sharks. I'm going to talk about the real story and discuss why those stories could have better results for the conservation of sharks. That's on this episode of How to Protect the Ocean. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of How to Protect the Ocean. I am your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, what you can do to speak up for the ocean, and how you can protect the ocean and live for a better ocean through action. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about more of communication and how media communicates shark bites. Oftentimes, you'll see it as a shark attack or a horrific shark attack or something to that point. We're gonna dive into that and why I think that obviously is not good for shark conservation in general and getting support for shark conservation, and why there's stories that aren't told within each of those shark bite events. Especially when there is a story. Oftentimes there is of why the person was out there in the first place, even though there was a sighting of increased presence of sharks. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I just want to kind of give you an update. Last couple of episodes, I recorded while I was sick. My voice is still off. I actually found out I have COVID. Not fun. So I've been isolated in my house, away from my family as much as possible. And so unfortunately I missed out on a lot of things and on my girls' hockey and sports and soccer and all that kind of stuff. So it's been bummy. It's been crummy, and I don't like it, but I feel fine. Just my voice is a little off. I've got a bit of a cold. I had a cough. It's better now. So if my voice kind of goes in and out, I apologize. I am on the mend, but COVID is still out there, guys. So just be careful. Anyway, let's get back into the episode. I wanted to talk about this because I saw a couple. This story popped up on my feed a couple of times, and it popped up on one of the feeds that I use, Flipboard. I'm not sponsored by Flipboard, but I use it as a way to sort of get some of the headlines that are out. And I see this headline, and it's a horrible headline. You know, it's very graphic in that headline, and it's about a white shark and how it bit a person off the coast of Mexico. That person was he was above 50 years old. He was essentially a fisherman of sorts. He was diving to catch mollusks. I'm not sure. I think it was oysters or something like that, or clams. I think it was a type of clam, highly prized, and he got bit. And it's tragic. Unfortunately, the person passed away, and it was witnessed by other fishers. So obviously a horrible event, but it was made worse by the way. And to me, it's made worse by the way it was shared, the way it was described. The headlines were talking about where this person was bit. And I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to do that for, clicks or for listens or anything like that. It was not obviously it's something that is not fun to share. But the article that I saw, basically went through the graphic details, where the person was bit, how far down or where it was, and it was horrible. It made you really be like, wow, that's really graphic. That must have been a horrible thing to witness, horrible thing to go through, obviously. And you look at that and you're like, what is, as someone who looks at science communication, as someone looks at communication, is like, what does this prove, right? What is this trying to do? And I feel as though it's trying to get clicks, right? It's a headline. And it's a graphic headline, and people are like, "Ooh, I want to know more about this," because sometimes we can't even try not to do it, right? We have to click. We want to know. It's like a bad car accident. Everybody stops and they look over to see if they can see anything, even though they don't really want to see it because it could traumatize them, but they want to see it, right? Even though out of respect for the persons or the people involved, you don't want to do it. But your curiosity gets the best of you at that point. And I feel like we did the same thing with clicking on headlines. There's some times where I'm like, that's not a good headline. I don't really want to see it. But you're curious because you want to click to see what more to the story is, right? When I first came across this headline, it was actually not on a news article, but it was on a post of a popular, let's just say, videographer from a very popular series of TV shows that deal with sharks. That person posted a graphic of a headline, right? And the headline had the way the person got bit. And one of the comments was from a friend of mine, a scientist, a shark scientist. I'm not going to say their names because I don't want to get involved. I don't want to hate going towards anybody. But, the person who commented was like, hey, I understand this is a story that needs to be shared. The person who shared the meme, I guess it was, or the picture, it was just a picture of a great white. But they said in the post, not the comment, but in the post, they're talking about how we shouldn't be berating sharks. We shouldn't be demonizing them. Sharks are predators and they eat, and they're big, and so they eat big things. And unfortunately, sometimes humans get mistaken for other types of food, but we're not their primary source of food. And we're not exactly what they want. We don't have the fat deposits. We don't have the energy that they require, and so forth. And it's unfortunate that these things happen. And the post was, I do feel it was genuinely they're trying to help out. This poster has been controversial in the past. This one was a bit more controversial because of the image they shared. And the commenter, who's a shark scientist and a shark conservationist, was like, why did you have to share it in such a way? The way you share it, brings about the demonization of these animals, makes them look barbaric, makes them look horrible. And the image you chose to share, which to me didn't look like an image that was part of the original article, potentially one of their own images, made it look like this shark was hunting. It made it look like this shark, mouth open, water kind of dripping. It's just as they probably came across the surface. Beautiful photo when you look at, a white shark and you're saying, wow, this is an animal. This is a formidable animal. It was a beautiful, but in that light, with that headline, where they talked about how this person got bit, you're looking at, wow, this makes this shark look really, really mean. Right, I can see the demonization of that shark, and so the commenter was like, "I'm disappointed in the way that you shared this. I understand your message, but I'm very disappointed in the way you shared it. You're perpetuating the scariness. It's like when there's when you see these shows with sharks or these movies with sharks, and they put the music behind it, right, to make it look even worse." To make it seem scary. Like, we know the Jaws theme. I use the Jaws theme in Beyond Jaws because we're trying to get to something great, but the message is completely positive. It's like for Beyond Jaws, it's like taking that music that we've been so scared of. Imagine if we were in the ocean, just swimming, and you hear that one of your friends puts that music on. You're going to think about a shark coming up, right? It's in our psyche. It's just sort of how we think. And because especially as a kid who grew up in the 80s, Jaws was prevalent. We used to think that there would be a shark in a pool or in a lake or things like that, just because that movie had such an effect on us. But when we use it in Beyond Jaws, we use it with my co-host, Dr. David Ebert. We use it in a way to be like, hey, there's more than white sharks out there. We want to go beyond that. We want to go beyond the Jaws, beyond the music, and really start to dive into what a career looks like as a shark scientist, what shark science looks like, and kind of go behind the scenes. And we talk to people who go behind the scenes of that. And it's a great show. I love it. I love doing it. I love discovering the different people that are within, the elasmobranch, science journey. So not only sharks, but we're looking at, stingrays and manta rays and chimeras and all this kind of stuff. It's wonderful. But the music makes a difference, right? And so the way you put words with images can definitely have an effect on the way we think of sharks. And this has been a big problem when we're talking about conservation of sharks. When we talk about the conservation of sharks, you need people to back it up. You need people, not only you and I, but people who are in science policy or, that make laws that, and, some people don't like sharks. They're scared of them. Some people will not go in the water because of sharks, right? They think that if they go in the water, a shark is going to bite them. a shark is going to kill them. And so we are already fighting against sort of the demonization of sharks from the past. And that continues to happen in the media. Most people do not get ocean to their ears like you do, or to their eyes like I do when I search for articles. Most people don't get that, but they do get sort of the sensationalization of ocean in the media. They get the big ones, and it's usually negative. So they'll get like, hey, this area flooded due to sea level rise, or this hurricane was made worse by climate change and the ocean is attacking us, or a shark attack happened, or it never says, oh, shark mistakes human and gives them a nibble, or shark mistakes human and accidentally, bites a human. No, they never talk about that. They say shark attack, like it's like they're seeking out the human and they want to eat it all. That's what happens to your psyche as you think of that. I'm not a psychologist or anything, but this is what happens when you think of that. This is what happens when you always put sharks on the mainstream media in light where it's like they're dangerous. This is what happens when you're in a TV show, in a movie, and eerie music comes up in an ocean. What do you think of? You're not going to think of a dolphin coming by. You're not going to think of a whale coming by. Once you hear that eerie music, you're going to think something bad's going to happen. There's probably going to be a shark. And that's not necessarily the case, right? As important as sharks are to our ocean, as an apex predator, to regulate sort of the food web and to ensure that things don't get out of whack, we need to care more for them. We need to love them more. And there are more and more people who are loving sharks. You are probably one of them. You're listening right now. You are probably one of those people, and I love you for that, right? But we are all in this, and we all need to do this. And to have an article that talks more about the bite because they know they can get clicks on that headline for more people to read it and bury the actual story. And here's the actual story, is that this person who was looking for this prize clam does this on a regular basis in off the coast of Mexico. It's the Pacific coast of Mexico. And that person is among his colleagues, among his other fishermen, will go diving in the ocean 59, 60 feet without a scuba tank. They'll go down and they'll grab these clams as their prize. They're more expensive, and they will sell them potentially to the local market, potentially to resorts or hotels, right? Or to a middle person. And they make their living off of that. Well, because there was an increase, and that happens on a normal basis. They do this however often they can. But when there's an increased sighting of sharks, then the fishermen that go out there had to stop. Not a lot of them went out there because there's an increased risk of being mistaken for prey. And so there was a hold off on that, which increased the demand for these mussels, or for these mollusks, for these clams, because people wanted to eat them. So the price goes up as they're not available anymore. And so people thinking, well, hold on, I can't fish for these. And I don't know if this guy had another living or different types of fishing. But obviously he felt that he needed to go out because it was worth it. The risk was worth it because he could make more money because the demand was up, so the price goes up, right? Simple economics, supply and demand. So he wanted to and him and his colleagues, some of his colleagues went out, he went diving, grabbed the clams, they would sell them for a nice profit, and then they can continue on with their lives, right? This is not just a one-off. This is their living. So not being able to get these mollusks when they wanted impedes on their financial situation, right? We don't know where they were at in terms of money levels. We don't know that if they are living like a lot of us, paycheck to paycheck, but they are dependent on what they grab to sell, right? We have no idea. But obviously, the risk was worth the reward in this case, right? But there was a higher risk. This guy got bit, and unfortunately, he passed away. That was a big risk he took. But what put him in that situation? Where was his financial situation? Where are all the financial situations of the other people who are working to get these other fishermen who are diving for them? Right? Are they able to make a living? Like, was he that desperate to go out and get this information? And that's the story that I'm looking at, like, and I know this is not a good paper or a good thing. It's the Daily Mail from the UK, and it's they talk about a story later on that actually is interesting to me. It's like, what made this person think that the risk was worth the reward, even though there was increased, shark sighting? Now, this person's obviously done it for a while. If he's in his 50s, maybe he's probably like, it's like when you get a storm announced, big winter storm coming. Here in Canada, we get, snowstorm warnings all the time. We had just had one the other day, and, I was talking to a friend of mine. I'm like, well, what are the odds that we're going to get 10 to 20 centimeters? Because they've announced that a number of times, but we haven't really gotten 10 to 20 centimeters. And when it does come, you're like, oh, there was. So maybe it was a good idea I stayed home, or I was off the roads most of the time, right? But in this case, like that could affect me if I decide to go out on the roads and I get into an accident, or I get hurt, or my family gets hurt, or somebody else gets hurt. That was the risk. I didn't have to go out, right? There was no need for me to go out. I can work from home. I'm in a better situation than many people, so I stayed home, regardless of what the storm was, and it ended up being a pretty decent sized storm. But this person may needed to get it for money. May need to sell this stuff for money because maybe he's in a bad situation. Maybe he's dependent on this food, like to bring in and sell. Right? The money's good, so why not? And he's probably been through it enough where they've had increased shark sightings, but nobody's been harmed. Shark bites don't happen that often, so maybe he's just like, well, I should be fine. And unfortunately, he wasn't. And that's the story, is what happens if there are increased shark sightings? What happens to the compensation to these fishermen? Nobody's out there helping them, right? So how do they make their living, right? If they can't fish because of increased sharks, well, how do they make their living for that time period, right? Is this something that's happened before? That's the story that I would like to get to know, right? Why was he out there in the first place? What made him think that this was he had to be out there? I think that's the story that was missed, and that's the story that's continued to be missed in this situation, right? It's a tragedy. There's no doubt, and I feel for the family. I feel for the person, obviously, and I would like to know more. How do we avoid this in the future? How do we stop getting people to go out there because they're potentially worried about their financial situation, right? And it could be the other side. Maybe this person was fine. Maybe this person was financially fine and wanted to go out more because he realized that there was money to be made. Right? But that's the story that I would like to know. I would like to know the reasons for going out there. Talk to maybe some of the other fishermen, his colleagues, to be like, why did you guys go out there when there's an increased risk of sharks? Is it a financial thing? Is it like, what's the story behind that? Not just how this person was bit. It gives us nothing. It does nothing for the person. It does nothing for the shark. It does nothing for the fishing community, right? Other than just sensationalize another shark bite. And I think that's, journalists, if you call Daily Mail journalism, but if the journalists are missing the point of these stories of what happens and how it can affect shark management as well as fishing management in the future for their safety. Right? Let's stop caring more about how many clicks a headline can get and more about why this person was out there, and maybe more about the people who are involved in this and the colleagues that they could have been involved in this, or maybe in the future. How do we avoid this situation in the future? That's the story I would like to know. I would love to know your thoughts on this. Do you think that there was another story involved? Do you think there's always another story involved that you would like to hear to get away from these types of headlines? Love to hear your thoughts. Go to Instagram. You can DM me at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean, all one word. Or you can go to speakupforblue.com and you can just click on the Contact Us. Send me an email through that form. It goes right to my inbox. I'd love to hear from you. But other than that, thank you so much for listening to this episode of How to Protect the Ocean. I am your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.